Welcome to the Beginner Soap series. I'm Rose and we're going to be launching our business Cadence Rose on January 1st, 2024. So in preparation for that, we're going to be posting 5 videos a week this month of December, and we're going to be starting a Beginner Soap series. So the Beginner Soap series is, as it sounds, we're going to be making a series for the very beginners of soap. Because it would have been really helpful when we started making soap if there was somebody who had a more concise, very detailed soap beginner thing. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. This will definitely be for like very beginners. You've never touched soap, you just are interested in it maybe. So that is what we will be doing today. We're not in the kitchen, we're not making soap today, but we are going to be talking about vocab words and things you need to know to make your soap as good as possible, even if you're a beginner. Because when we made our first batch of soap, it was fine and it was usable, but it was definitely not the most nice looking, and there were a lot of things we could have changed around so that further down the road we wouldn't be so bombarded with these problems. The first thing, what is soap and why do you need lye? When you make soap, there's a thing called saponification. Saponification is what happens when an alkaline and your fats, butters and oils and things like that come together and make a chemical reaction to make soap. So your alkaline, what everybody uses, is lye, sodium hydroxide, caustic soda, or for liquid soap, potassium hydroxide. So that is your alkaline. They're very caustic, and if you get them on your skin and your eyes, they can cause they can be very harmful. So that's why you need proper safety gear. And as I am underage, I do have an adult around at all times while I'm making soap or helping me, and of course proper gear. So when you make soap, those come together to make that reaction to make soap, and that's what will get you lather, that's what will clean you, and yeah, that's how you make soap. Next is superfat. When you put a recipe in your soap calculator thing, you will come across a thing that says superfat. What is that? That is, superfat is a percentages of oils that is not going to be saponified. So that's, you don't have enough lye to oils, so that's not going to be soap. That little bit of oils, and people do that so your soap is less drying. A lot of people, if you make shampoo bars with soap, a lot of people do superfats, and that's one thing, it just makes your soap nicer. Of course, you don't have to. When you make clear glycerin soap, a lot of people don't, because you're using glycerin and you want your soap to be clear. And some of the oils that, like I talked about, that are drying, some oils can be more drying than others. Coconut oil can be more drying if you make 100% coconut oil soap, or a recipe that's like majority coconut oil. Coconut oil will make your soap have more lather, but olive oil is kind of the opposite. It cleans, but it's not as cleansing, and it won't be as drying, but it also won't have as much lather. Soda ash. This is the first thing you make with soap. If you just leave it out, then all of a sudden you see this like dandruff-like looking kind of film on top. That is what soda ash is. Soda ash is what happens when you make your soap and it's still having time to saponify. During that first 24 to 48 hours, the lye if you leave it uncovered, the lye comes into contact with the carbon monoxide, and it creates that ash on top. So there are of course things to do to prevent that. You cover your soap up, you have lids or something. If you have a wood mold, you wrap it in towels for the first 48 hours. Or you can, what we do, we spray 99% isopropyl alcohol on top, which it doesn't affect anything, it will evaporate, and then we cover it up for the first 48 hours. And if you do make soap and it has soda ash already, a way to get rid of it is you can steam it. Having that little bit of moisture will take that little bit of soda ash off. Next is, when you make soap, you will hear things about trace and emulsion and seasoning and all of these words. So this is what we're going to talk about. Trace is when your soap gets thick enough that when you, I'll put a picture probably, but when you take your mixer out and the soap, when you run it, like you dribble it over the top of your soap and it like leaves a trail, like you can see where that little drops have sat and they're not liquidy enough to just like immediately disperse. So that's what trace is. I'll put pictures of it because I'm not the best at explaining it. And emulsion, you can pour your soap and your soap will be fine if your soap is at emulsion. Emulsion is just when your oils, your lye, your essential oils are just mixed. They're all combined and you're not gonna have like pockets of things. It's all mixed, but it's not thick enough to be to trace. And if you pour it in your mold like this, it'll probably take longer to set up, or it'll take longer to do designs on top, but it's fine. If you would like to just have it done quick, that's how you can do that. False trace is when you maybe would use oils or like a fragrance or something that makes your soap get thick quick. Like if you use oils that are hard at room temperature, they can become cool and make your soap thick, and you think, oh, I'm at a trace, when you're not. Then when you pour your soap in your mold and you let it sit, it'll be like gritty and the texture will be wrong. So that's what false trace is. If you come into if you have false trace happen to you, you probably just need to rebatch your soap. So that's just making hot process soap essentially. And then seasoning. Ugh, I hate a seasoning. So when you use a certain fragrance oil, certain essential oils, it can happen with essential oils. We just use essential oils. You put it in your soap batter and it can either make your soap get really thick, or it can turn it into a rock like instantly. So that's just a tip for something like that, is to put all of your, like if you want to use kale and clay, or if you want to put color or mica in, put all of that in first if you can, and then put your essential oil if you've never used the essential oil before, or fragrance oil, just so you're safe. Next is heat and how that relates to things like gel phase. So gel phase is a thing where the heat while your soap is saponifying normally makes the colors of your soap brighter, or it will change the color slightly. So a lot of people like to cover their soaps in wood molds to create more heat, or they put them in the oven on like a low setting so that it'll create warmth. But if you put your soap in the fridge right after you've made it, it will stop gel phase and your soap just won't go through gel, which a lot of people prefer not to do, or you can force it like I said. But and if you see your soap has like a little darker spot in the middle of a color, that's because your soap isn't fully gelled. It doesn't have anything to do with the quality of soap. If you want to put your soap in the fridge, if you want to put it in the oven, it doesn't have to do with the quality, it's just kind of appearances. Now one thing you have to be careful with is heat. When you put your soap in the oven, or if you put it in wood molds and they're really, really well insulated, or if you use coconut oil. Heavy coconut oil recipes, coconut oil gets hot very, very fast. Or if you use sugar in soap. Sugar is like a lather booster. If you put it in your lye water, so it'll get hot and your soap might crack. If your soap cracks, you just need to put alcohol on the soap and get a Ziploc bag and squish it together, and that will fix it. That is some of the few very key things for making soap. Or if you're a very, very beginner, I know if you know anything about soap, a lot of that information is kind of redundant and you hear about it a lot, but it's very important to know those things. And just so you know, like I said, we are going to be launching our business on January 1st. We're going to be making all natural soap, body butter, deodorant, lip balm, and candles with essential oils, clays, and things like that. And we will be launching on Etsy and our website, and we will be on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Pinterest. And if I'm forgetting anything, I'll put things on the screen. And thank you for watching.